listening to Overwatch League Daily, your daily source for Overwatch League news, scores, and more. Here's your host, KickedTripod.
Good morning, Overwatch League fans. This is your Overwatch League daily episode for March 21st, 2018. We've got a special guest with me today. Uber from Overwatch League is going to be discussing some of the big topics surrounding Overwatch League right now. We talk about the Houston Outlaws, the Seoul Dynasty, the LA Gladiators, and more. We're going to get to that in a moment, but first, here's today's schedule brought to you by patreon.com/OWL Daily Show. For the first match of the evening, we have the LA Gladiators taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. The Gladiators are still technically in the running for playoff contention for Stage 2, so this is going to be a very important match. Then we've got the Florida Mayhem taking on the San Francisco Shock. Sinatra is eligible, so this will be his first game that he will be playing in a Shock uniform. And then we have the Shanghai Dragons taking on the struggling Houston Outlaws. That all starts at 4 p.m. Pacific time at overwatchleague.com. Here is my conversation with Uber. All right, I am back with Uber, second time on the show now. We've been trying to get this second one on the books for a while, but man, thanks so much for taking the time with me.
Pleasure to be here, bro. Always enjoyed listening, so it's nice to contribute every now and then as well.
Oh, thanks so much. It was funny. We were talking about some ideas with some friends, and what we want to do next time we have you on the show is we want to do like a freestyle wordplay thing with you, because, man, some of those mixtapes you're basically putting out there on the casting desk are just amazing.
It's funny, I feel like I'm in a different mindset when I cast, and I walk away from the desk sometimes and I don't really remember stuff I've said. So I feel like if you did put me on the spot, the results wouldn't be that stellar, to be honest.
Okay. You're modest. I appreciate that. We've got a ton of stuff going on in Overwatch League, and I love when we get Overwatch League casters and analysts on the show, because you guys provide such amazing insight on some of the topics that part A, because you're all brilliant, because you're in Overwatch League. You wouldn't be there if you weren't brilliant. B, there's some insight and tools that casters and analysts and people involved with Overwatch League had. And so I've got just a few different topics I wanted to run down with you. And I wanted to start with the Seoul Dynasty. So the Dynasty we saw them look great in the beginning of Stage 1, and then they kind of fell off in the middle. And then in Stage 2, it looked like maybe they're on the rise again, and then now we're seeing them kind of falter. Now their losses came against NYXL and London, I believe, right? But is Seoul playing their best right now, in your opinion?
Honestly, I picked them at the start of the season to win it. At the start of the stage, sorry. Just now with the Mercy changes rotating out and with Fleta playing as well as he was. The thing is, Seoul had a week where they had to play in New York and London. And you can't prepare for both of those effectively with the time that you have available. So you basically prepare for whichever one, and you go all in on one of them, basically. And it's pretty clear to see that Seoul prepared for New York quite extensively. It was a very close series. I mean, it was 2-1 at one point for Seoul, and they were looking really good. Munchkin was having a really good game. Unfortunately, his map 5 wasn't good at all, and that really hurt them. Against New York, it's quite clear to see that New York as well just downloaded them. They were quite able just to sort of play around them. London, should I say. London actually tried to play a defensive style with Junkrat and Widowmaker on Hanamura, and then just decided they didn't want to do that, and they just played defensive dive, and Seoul couldn't handle it at all. So they're not playing their best right now at all. It's a tough week though. I hate having to assess a team that has to play both New York and London in the same week, and then sort of when people sort of look so much at that second game when again we sort of know that Seoul focused very heavily on the New York game. So it's a rough week for them. I think they're doing okay, but there's definitely a couple of things they need to be working on.
I think that brings up a really interesting point though about team preparation, and it seems to me that I might be inferring here, but the importance of preparation in Overwatch League seems to be kind of unmatched in the sense that, I mean, Seoul's never taken a map off of London, and if they didn't prepare for London like they did NYXL, like how big of a disparity difference there is against teams who kind of prepare and don't prepare. Is that kind of the illusion that we should be drawing?
There is a big difference now. And Monty brought it up on one watch point. I made a very good point in saying that, like, now there's a lot of tape available on these teams from stage 1 and, you know, even stage 2, right? There's no reason why good coaching staff wouldn't be able to collate a very, very good list of reels for, you know, enemy or opponent teams that, you know, they're going up against. And there's a crap load of resources now available on these other teams to sort of know how to play in against them. So I think, like, some of the biggest differences we're seeing right now, firstly, is that Western teams, or non-Apex teams, let's go with that one, are struggling with dive. A lot of them aren't playing dive very well. Boston have had to adapt some small things about their dive as well, even though they're very dive-oriented. I think they're the most like London than any other team, in my opinion. But yeah, it's also the preparation. And I would say that there's not much time at all during the week to prepare. Even if you play first on Wednesday, then on Saturday, like, you still don't have that much time in between. After you take a day off on the Sunday, you know, and you get back into scrims, like, there's just not that much time at all to prep, especially with how much material coaches are going to be digging up. So it is important, and you will start to see the difference very, very much, especially towards the late end of the stage. It gets harder for teams that are performing poorly, because not only do they have to prepare for teams they're going up against, but they also have to try and fix inherent problems that they're having in their roster, which is tough.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, something that's been really interesting with Seoul is Fleta, right? Fleta at the beginning of stage 1, like, really, anytime you talked about MVP, and obviously it's very early to talk about MVP stage 1, but Fleta was just kind of off the walls, insane, head and shoulders above every kind of DPS. Do you see him making those same impacts now with Seoul that would make him a MVP worthy candidate?
All-star DPS players right now are living in a riskier landscape. A lot of the non-Apex teams had the crutch of Mercy being played to sort of cover over a lot of their early mistakes. I think the Houston Outlaws are a great example of a team that really benefited a lot from Mercy able to allow them to rewind the first mistake they made on every team fight. And then while that was being rewinded, Junkrat just wrecks everybody. And I think the Fleta also on some matches played a style that was more aggressive and more risk-takey. I mean, I just think back to like the 3 or 4K he got on Junkertown, where he was just like rappelling up the wall and stuff like that. And it was a good time to be a Widowmaker player, because they just, you know, reduced the cooldown of the grappling hook, so you could actually play more aggressively and dangerously and still kind of get yourself out of trouble. Now, you know, a bit more like Winston's jump pack cooling down. Like, that was what allowed Winston to be more aggressive, is that cooldown was reduced. Frankly, he's not having that same impact, or at least he's not that head and shoulders above the rest of his team or the rest of his league in terms of his DPS play anymore. Still very good, but I don't think that he was a star in that match. I think Munchkin actually played better than him. You know, this is something we asked for from Seoul a long time, is to see that second DPS slot start to perform better. They were rotating it in and out. Like, we'd see Wakid, we'd see Bunny, we'd see Munchkin come through, and we just sort of didn't know what look we were going to get from Seoul on any given day. And Fleta was always sort of head and shoulders above. And now they've sort of settled on this style. You know, we're seeing more of Munchkin, and that's sort of, you know, we see a bit of Bunny still, but that's allowing that second DPS slot to be more consistent in performance, especially now that Tracer is, you know, obviously still so crucial. Fleta is being managed a bit better by his opponents, I think, at the moment. And again, without Mercy, Fleta has a little bit less of a margin of error to work with, and some of that aggressive or flashy play can be punished now a lot easier.
Another topic I wanted to discuss with you was the Dallas Fuel. The Fuel have definitely had their share of issues in the game and out of the game. Between fines, bans, we've had roster instability, emotional instability. We really haven't seen them. It doesn't seem like they've had much of an opportunity to be able to just focus on playing the game. What, in your opinion, is going wrong in Dallas right now?
When I try and think or talk about, you know, Dallas's problem and ask myself, is this a unique problem? Is this just only them dealing with it? I'd kind of try and look at Florida Mayhem as an example of a team that, quite frankly, just struggled very badly in stage 1 and even at the start of stage 2. Much like Dallas did. There are a few key differences between these two. I think Dallas had far more expectation on their shoulders. And I think the players also expected much more of themselves. And I know like the Mayhem, were from top European teams as well, but their demeanor, I think has always remained the same. It's been very cheerful. It's been sort of very motivated, but also not overly subject to the whims of the community or, the winds of fate, as it were. Dallas got screwed over pretty bad, I have to say, like 3-4 weeks in a row with players not being present for whatever reason. And so they're constantly making these changes and switch ups. And, the player that was your star DPS all of a sudden, has this crisis of identity and telling people that he can't hit anything. And he's on his stream saying, I just can't play this game anymore. And he's moving over towards Winston. So I think like the atmosphere inside the team, like, I think there were certain individuals, some aren't there anymore with the Dallas Fuel, that definitely caused a more, fractured environment amongst those players. Some of the old guard, now are starting to realize that maybe they're just not cut out for this. It's less about how rigorous the Overwatch League is in terms of competition, but the schedule and the lifestyle. So I honestly think, they had like Kaikai had a lot of problems to deal with, like a lot of players not being there. We had Effect was away. We had Harry was sick. We had obviously Felix, no longer on that roster anymore. And then the rest of the players that were there were having their own issues. Communication now is still developing. Rascal's joined the team. Remember, this is a team that never played dive. They actually don't really know fundamentally how to play dive because it's just never been something they did. So you put Rascal on the team. You're now trying to work around Taimu on Winston, and you're trying to learn how to dive. And you're trying to learn how to dive mid-season while you're also trying to learn or scout opposition teams and develop specific strategies for beating them. At the moment, the Dallas Fuel can't do that. They actually can't specifically prepare for opponents. All they can do right now is focus on their fundamentals and their own game, which obviously is only half of the battle when it comes to preparing for a match. So they're behind. They're behind everyone else in terms of like where they're at and their understanding of the meta and all that stuff, and they can't catch up because there's not enough time in between the matches to sort this stuff out. So it's going to take time, and just bring in OGE, and then I think it will settle. But people are upset because there's no transparency from them, because they just don't feel like just regurgitating all their dirty laundry out to the fans. Because what I think that a lot of fans don't realize is that them knowing more won't necessarily help things. A little bit more will be fine, but if they just open the doors like that, it doesn't really help anyone.
And I'm glad you brought up that topic, and I didn't put it in our notes, so I'm throwing a curveball at you for a second. And let's talk about not even team transparency, but the channels that players and coaches have to communicate with. We'll just say the Overwatch League population, Overwatch population as a whole. We've got obviously, Twitter and Twitch, and players and coaches have taken to these mediums to communicate a lot of things. But Overwatch League has post-game press conferences, right? Do you think that that if those were either more public or had more structure maybe around them, do you think that maybe we would see less of this community fallaciously, that's not a word, but saying that, hey, we need more transparency, we need to know more, every other sport does this? Do you think that a lot of those issues might go away?
Maybe. I think half of the battle, and I don't want to belittle the community, or because people are smart, right? Like Overwatch viewers aren't dumb, but I feel like sometimes just being more transparent without giving them all the information will be enough to make them feel better. The fact that the community feels like there's some effort being taken to be more open with them. But you know what, bro? The Houston Outlaws do their own little press conference, like in their room, and they're still getting shit on. So, I don't think if the problems are there, it doesn't matter how much you talk about them, it doesn't matter. And Flame's trying to protect his team and sort of take the blame, and everyone's not having it. So I don't know what people want. Sometimes they ask for more transparency, but it's not necessarily that. I think that we need to go another level further in asking like what kind of transparency they want to see. Press conferences, they exist as a method of giving press content to work with, right? Because press are to be encouraged to get down here and to write articles and to give that insight. Basically, if you open up press conferences to the public, then there's no point in there being press, right? Because that's the whole point, is that the press will then deliver this information to their respective, their viewer or reader bases. I like that that Houston have their own little press conferences after the game. I mean, they sort of sit around, and I think that's great. And I think teams can do that. But I don't think that has solved. Like, there's still a lot of fans that are mad with Houston, albeit for different reasons, perhaps. I tend to think that there will always be something to gripe about with these teams, and like look at the series called Inside the LA Valiant right now. It's obviously Los Angeles the Valiant really trying to go a level deeper with their transparency and stuff. And it's so funny because people see it and they see the raw side of what it's like to be this team and be in this team house, and they see Verbo and Unco arguing. They see discussing like getting rid of coaches, and they see the mistakes that teams make. And the Valiant, for example, thought that getting rid of Cuddles would actually solve their problems. That's actually what they said, bare face, straight down the barrel of the camera. Obviously, that wasn't the case. We got to look in. There was a piece, a social studies piece this week done by the Overwatch League, where we're seeing the reaction of their new Korean coach to how they were playing, and he was deeply unhappy after they'd lost to the Mayhem. And then all the viewers are like, oh, this coach is so mean to them. They're so really like, oh, I'm mad about this now. It's like there's always going to be something to not be happy about. There's always going to be this world of punditry that exists like around these games, right? I think Shawfall put it very well when he said, if you go to social media to get your fix of positivity, then you're also going to go there and you're going to have to get your fix of negativity there, because you already have given yourself you've already put yourself in the mindset of just taking on board what social media says and allowing it to influence you, whether positively or negatively. You either take it all, good and bad, or you just don't take any of it at all and just be happy, just looking elsewhere for your own sort of sense of self-worth or your own encouragement.
I want to transition because, man, there's so much to unpack there. There was so much stuff I want to say, but I want to transition to something slightly more light, slightly more fun, and that is the Stage 2 playoffs. They're coming up this week. NYXL pretty much guaranteed a spot unless they find a way not to win either of their matches and drop a lot of maps in doing so. But we've got the Spitfire, Gladiators, and Dynasty with the same record and have 5 maps separating the 3 of them. Do you have a favorite to win the Stage 2 playoffs this time?
In terms of I guess I'll start with who I think is going to be in them. Obviously, like London and New York will be there. In terms of the third team that I think will join them, it's kind of interesting because it's not really a hard week for Seoul. They have the Mayhem, and before that they have the Outlaws. And I thought Outlaws would actually win last week against the Gladiators. I honestly thought that like they could overcome that sort of stuff in a short period of time, but they're coming in here. It's like a day job for them now. They're just trying to get the season done and do their best, and it's clear that they just don't have the time or the capacity to fix some of their issues at the moment. So Seoul has Houston and Florida, and I think the Gladiators actually have to play Philadelphia on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, and then Boston at the end of the week. So it'll be tough. I would like to see Gladiators in that top 3. I feel like just based on the balance of some of these matches that it will be the Valiant. It all hinges on that first game of the week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, first game of the week, Gladiators versus Fusion. I don't see the Gladiators beating London again, not in the same fashion at least. But they're a team right now. They're not a known quantity because we've only actually seen them trend upwards in their performances right now. So it's very hard to know like what their plateau looks like. If it, obviously like last week's games were huge for them. Beating Houston sort of 3-2, and then sort of beating the Florida Mayhem. But that was quite close, right? So it's very, very hard for me to curve out on where the Gladiators sit. I would definitely put them below London and New York on a proper day. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from the Gladiators' win against London because it was really impressive. But I think if there's a chance for preparation there, then London will be able to sort of bounce back. The most important thing I think to take note of here is that last time around we actually had like London and New York play on the same day. Then they played again, and like we had all like these big matches right before the playoffs, and it was on the same day, and it was just a nightmare. So now, obviously, the last game for New York is against the Valiant, right? A very weakened LA Valiant. The last game for London is against a well, Dallas feel. I don't need to say any more there. So there's a good chance that these teams can actually proactively prepare for those playoff matches now during the week or even before the week. I mean, NYXL played Dallas in their first game. So it's possible if you're in New York that you could just sit back and look straight at the playoffs from Monday onward and be more prepared for it, which is what I think hurt them in the last stage final game. So I think New York can win the stage finals.
So something with the playoffs that we've seen, though, is that we have a different map pool and a different map type set, right? Can a team still prepare for the other teams, knowing that we could see different maps and map types? Like last time, NYXL dominated control, and in season 1, you don't get your tiebreaker control map. It was payload or hybrid or something.
Yeah, I mean, the difference now being that it's because the stage playoffs are a true best of 5 format instead of like a 4-map series with a potential added map on. I think if you're either of these two teams looking ahead, like you shore up your weaknesses on certain map types, but you don't sort of specifically plan for a series to fall out the way it does, because there's total potential for 2 of those 5 maps to just not get played if it's a 3-0. So, to try and hope to hold out. I mean, you practice maybe the first 3 maps and then you just sort of go from there. It's a bit wishy-washy of an answer, I suppose, but I don't think this is going to be an issue for any of these teams that I think will make it in, even the Gladiators to a degree. I feel like you have like the whole week to look towards that, and you know what the pool is now. The Spitfire are really flexible. I mean, the only weakness I see on the Spitfire right now is that they tried to play like the defensive comp this week, and like it just completely didn't work against New York, or was it Seoul? I think it was Seoul, actually. Yeah, so maybe they can't play that, and so they might have to carry themselves just on how good their dive is. And the question is their dive really going to be good enough to deal with like a more aggressive Zenyatta in Jonak as opposed to Jaehong, who got shut down pretty hard. And obviously fair. It's also because Weeyol's a more aggressive diva as well, and he actually joined the dive a lot more instead of sitting on his backline, because Bedosen could be trusted to sort of stay safe with Nuss. So yeah, there's a few reasons why that Spitfire were able to play that super aggressive dive, because Miro was trying to counter dive them, but they baited Seoul so hard in that series. So I think they'll be fine. I think that's a huge concern. Looking at the map pool and looking ahead.
Great. Awesome. Well, Uber, I really, really want to thank you again for taking the time to come on the show. It's always a blast to have you. I'm glad we could do this live this time and get to chat face to face. I really appreciate it. Make sure to tune into Overwatch League for all the listeners out there every Wednesday through Sunday this week. Anything else from you, Uber?
No, that's about all. Thanks for listening, everybody. Me and Matt have the stage final this time around, so we'll get the big match. So that's gonna be fun. Tune in for that for sure.
Awesome. My thanks to Uber for stopping by on the show. He's got so much incredible insight into the league. I really loved getting to sit down and talk to him. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at UberShouts. Tomorrow I am going to be joined by Overwatch League analyst Bren, and we're going to discuss some other topics in Overwatch League that have been on our minds. So make sure to stay tuned for that. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or your favorite podcast app of choice so you don't miss future episodes. You can also watch or listen to the show at winstonslab.com. Find links to everything at overwatchleaguedaily.com. And if you have a question or comment for the show, email me at overwatchleaguedaily@gmail.com. One small little thing to back everything, or to kind of wrap everything up. First, follow us on Twitter at OWL Daily Show. There's lots of stuff and lots of conversations we're having over there. We also have a Discord, discord.me/OWL Daily Show. And last but not least, if you do like the show and you'd like to support it, if you go to patreon.com/OWL Daily Show, it helps support us with hosting costs, bringing on guests, paying our graphic design person who we haven't even been able to pay yet. He's done all of this awesome work for the show for basically free so far, and we want to be able to support him in doing that. That's patreon.com/OWL Daily Show. Thanks again to Uber for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with Bren for another episode of Overwatch League Daily.